Are there any significant efforts attempting to, for example, address the weaknesses, and let's just say the power grid as an example?
The power grid is very advanced in its efforts to combat the cybersecurity threat. My hat's off to the power grid, the electricity subsector. They have tremendous leadership. They are very, very coordinated. They are sharing information, and they are building protocols, response protocols and measures. And so, is there a vulnerability in the cybersecurity environment? If I said there wasn't a vulnerability, I would lose credibility entirely. Yes, of course there's a vulnerability. The question is, how arduously are we working to address that potential vulnerability and build the best defenses we can? I would put the power grid up there in rank.
Okay, so now with that in mind, I've mentioned North Korea, Iran, and like some of the others. There was talk about ISIS potentially trying to, unsuccessfully infiltrate the power grid. Are there any threat actors that we're not necessarily familiar with that DHS is monitoring that you can tell us about?
I don't think I can really share what we know. That's a community property, if you will, and when I speak of the intelligence community. But we are very vigilant in understanding the international landscape and what the threat picture is.
Okay. What are the main weaknesses that you see that DHS is trying to shore up in the cyber infrastructure?
So I'm not sure I would describe it as a weakness. What I would say is an opportunity. And I think the language is important here. The sharing of information to ensure that an exploit that might be successful does not have the capacity to replicate is vitally important. And the sharing of information is the best tool to combat against the potential for replication. And that's where we are very, very focused. And let me give you, if I can, an example. Company A suffers a cyber incident. And if Company A shares that threat indicator with us, and we in turn push that threat indicator broadly throughout the community, then people will build the defenses to ensure that Company A's suffering is not replicated by others because they've built the defense against it. That's a model in one area of our focus.
What you're saying is pretty much the focus of the new, or one of the focuses of the CISA Act that's being promoted, but yet a lot of private companies are rebelling against it, like, the tech industry and stuff like that. Given, frankly, what sounds like a very helpful goal, what are their main objections, and what's your response to those objections?
The sharing of information in the cyber environment. CISA, the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, which is passing its way through the legislature, contemplates the sharing of information with the government. The government is best positioned to take that information and disseminate it across the nation as an honest broker. The concern with that is the privacy implications. But why the administration's position has been that the Department of Homeland Security should be on point on behalf of the government for the receipt and then the reciprocal dissemination of information is because we are uniquely situated as a civilian department that has a statutorily created Office of Privacy and Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. And so we have protocols in place to protect the privacy interests that are of such legitimate concern in the public, number one. Number two, it's not just sharing information with the government, which we think is of vital importance for the reasons I've identified, but it's also companies' ability to share information amongst themselves. And the President's executive order of November of 2014 called for the creation of the information sharing and analysis organizations and the ability to share information not only just within a sector, but amongst a group of companies, and we're developing best practices for that.